I just want to jump right in. I want to start with a question that you guys brought to us, and I want to bring it to Eli. So someone asked, what are some ways you can prepare as a single person for a marriage in the future? And if you want to add to that, I was thinking, you know, how important is it to be a single, secure person before jumping into a relationship?
That's a good question. Coming from a kid who was not secure in himself in high school and like in and out of relationships every 2 seconds, like Don said something in discipleship group a few months ago. He said, if you can't lead yourself, you won't be able to lead anybody else.
That's good.
So like for me, before I even met Leora, I was coming out of a really couple of bad relationships that I put myself in. And I found that I didn't have any good habits for myself. So I was you were just talking about it, trash in, and I was getting trash out. And so there was a 2-year surrender gap. I went to college at Glen Oaks, and there was a gap for my relationship that ended right before that. And then it was 2 years before I even was with Leora. So it was like those 2 years, when I got into college, that's when I was really like, all right, Lord, my next relationship is going to be the woman I'm going to marry. And so I laid it all before him, and that was the moment of surrender where everything changed in my life. And so after I took that step, I still had to wait 2 years before Leora even showed up. So even when you surrender, you can't expect God to do something right away. Sometimes you have to wait. But I was finally able to lead myself for those 2 years, and I finally felt capable of bringing myself into a relationship. So if you are doing trash now, you're going to get trash out. So prepare yourself now.
Where's Juliana at? Is she in here? Yeah. So everybody say hi to Juliana.
Hi, Juliana.
What's up, baby?
Breno, I'm going to shoot this question back to you, man, because you might be the prime example of somebody who waited for God to move in their life and bring a spouse.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, me and my wife, we were married just over a year ago, and it's been a blessing so far, yeah. And she was actually my first, like, real girlfriend. And I remember being in high school, just seeing a ton of different relationships just go south. And I'm like, man, if I want to do this, I want to do it right. You know, and of course, I had different pursuits and stuff, but, you know, just like Eli said, I heard this advice, like, if I can't lead myself well, how could I lead somebody else well? And I just, instead of having that focus of like, okay, I'm going to try to run after a girl and have her be my wife, I changed my mindset. You know, I'm going to run after God. And if someone else, if a cutie is running after God with me, instead of trying to be distracted looking all over for a future spouse, you know, God is going to turn my head and be like, you see that girl over there? She's also chasing after me. So it's like, I feel like a lot of relationships, especially with Christians, non-Christian stuff, we try to pull that girl, pull that guy towards Jesus. But then that doesn't work. Like, God has a design where the two people are singularly, as a single person, chasing God by themselves, and God wants to put you with somebody else who's chasing him just as much. And I found that in my wife, and it wasn't until I stopped going from distraction to distraction, be like, okay, I'm just going to wait for my wife. And it was like, it wasn't like I wasn't even looking, like it just happened. Like, we literally met on a family vacation. Like, you don't go on a family vacation to find a spouse. You go to the vacation to go to the beach. But that's how it turned out. But it was because I was trying to focus on being a single person first.
I want to add something. Oh, you want to add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Don't put this pressure on yourself.
Yeah, that's
that
it.
You have to be dating somebody.
Facts.
Or
Yep.
talking to somebody, whatever lingo you use now. Like, you don't have to do that to be cool or to fit in. It's something I struggled with as a teenager, and maybe some of you do too. Like, you think, I have to be in a relationship or I have to be talking to somebody, like, otherwise I'm a failure. And it's not true. So don't put that pressure on yourself. Yep.
Yeah, and I've done it both ways. I was divorced early because I tried to force a relationship when I was 20 and didn't have God in my life. And you can get married. I mean, you can force anything you want to force. But if it's not, if you don't love God first, I mean, I wouldn't say that's for everybody, but my life speaks to that. That until I loved God first, until I put God first, my first marriage was completely and utterly a failure. Where now we've been married for 18 years, and we put God first. And so, honestly, if you put God first in everything you do, it just sets everything up for success.
Yep, that's true. And since we're having this conversation of like, I don't know, maybe you guys feel it. Like, let me see a nod if you feel like there is some type of pressure or like some type of expectations. Like, oh, I'm in high school, so I need to be talking to someone. Like, I need to be in a relationship. Like, wow, all my friends are we're talking on Snapchat with somebody, and I'm not cool because I'm not talking to anybody. First off, stop with that nonsense, that talking stage. That's the most toxic thing you could ever be in. Not sorry. So this thing of like, okay, we have all these young people feeling this pressure to be in relationships. Now, Lynette, first of all, how many years have you and Tim been married?
In a couple of weeks, we'll celebrate our honeymoon anniversary.
Wow, come on. And you could call Tim and Lynette, I mean, we would say high school sweethearts, but they're really preschool sweethearts. I mean, something like that. So, Lynette,
Shout out Tim.
It's the bald head. I mean, he didn't have it when he was 3, but no. So why do you think, just from seeing young people a lot today, being a youth leader, why do you think young people rush into relationships?
Well, I think it goes back to something you mentioned earlier. God made us for relationship. And there's something inside of all of us who want to be known, we want to belong, we want to be valued. And so it's easy to start, especially as a teenager, start looking at the opposite gender and saying, like, will this person come along and be that for me? And so we start to put less value on ourselves because we lower our own value in order to be able to get what we think we need from somebody else.
Yep.
So I think that's what happens a lot of times is just having that someone special that's going to hold your hand or talk to you or text you or whatever. And so then we lower our standards, as it were, so that we can have somebody else fill that void in our life.
With that, if we aren't completely found in Christ, then we're going to continually be searching for identity and other things like relationships, but you're never going to find that. And so if you're not fully satisfied in who Christ has created you to be, then you're going to continuously be on that path of unsatisfaction. And so I think that's unfair to who you're with, too, because you're putting so much pressure on them and just wanting something from them that they can never give you. And so it's just so important knowing who you are before you step into something like that.
That's really good, that thing, knowing who you are. Like, that's like the best advice for any of you who are thinking about stepping into a relationship. Can you answer the question, I know who I am? Not as this person's boyfriend, this person's girlfriend. Like, as a single person, I know who I am in Christ. And we can all attest to the fact that none of us were ready for a relationship until we could answer that question. I know who I am. Because we try to answer the first, what we try to answer first is, who am I to you? Who am I to you? Who am I to you? But no, we need to ask God, who am I to you? And then he can answer back, this is who you are.
And you might not realize it yet, but this is a trick question. But in 5 years, you will be completely different than you are now, right? Hopefully in a good way. And one time I said that to our Sunday school class of high schoolers, and they were like, nah, I'm me. I'm like, okay, but if you would have got a tattoo when you were 12, you would have got like SpongeBob SquarePants or something. And today you wouldn't be real proud of that, right? And they're like, right. I'm like, right. So take your time. Go ahead and, coming from an old dude, enjoy your high school years. This is one of the best. I know y'all don't believe it, but it's like you're halfway grown up and you're halfway not. So like when you want to be grown up, you can be grown up, but then when you run out of money, you can turn back to your mom and be like, oh my gosh, I spent all the money at the fair. Can I borrow $20?
Speaking from experience with your daughters.
Can I add something real quick?
Yep.
So like I feel like how Amy said it, and how Lynette said it as well, we desire relationships, and for the longest time, we desire a relationship for a reason. And I was putting relationships that weren't with God above the relationship with God.
Come on. Yep.
So it doesn't work. You can't put a relationship above God. Like my relationship with my wife is my second most important relationship. My first important relationship is with God. If that isn't in check, my relationship with my wife will not be in check as well.
And another thing that happens too is when you get into a relationship with another person, they are a broken human being just like you are. Yep. And I have failed my husband and he has failed me throughout the years. But when we don't base everything being like I'm completely fulfilled in who I am because of who he is, it's not because of who my husband is, it's because of who the Lord is to me. And so that's where we then be able to go back and to have forgiveness for one another. But if you don't have two different people with that mindset, that's where you run into trouble.
I want to add something else. Colton and I were talking about it the other day, but another example is, say, like, you and your boyfriend are dating and he has a bad day, then you're going to take those emotions on you because you rely off of him. And so that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be, again, your own person. And when he's having a bad day and you're strong in yourself, you can lift him up instead of go down with him. And so it's so important just to be 100% whole instead of two halves coming together. It's supposed to be two wholes coming together.
Man, she preaching right now, Mrs. Gasho. She's preaching. Man, no, like, to add on to that, this is really good stuff, by the way. This is a great conversation. And that thing you said about, like, because, you know, the Bible says, cast your cares onto the Lord. But how many times do we cast our cares onto our significant other? Because here's the thing, like, your significant other, they're amazing, right? They're there for you. Like my wife, she's amazing, but she's not my rock, right? One phrase you hear a lot with relationships, like, oh my gosh, like, Timmy, like, he's just my rock. Like, he's the foundation that I just stand on. It's like, girl, if you put Timmy as your foundation, you're going to fall. Like, that's facts. Because until you learn how to cast your cares to God, he's going to fulfill that. Because even as a married man, I still have to cast my cares to God as his son. So it's wrong for me as a husband to throw all my pain, all my emotions onto her, because that's not her job as my wife. Her job as my wife is my helper. She's not my God, right? But that's what happens though. We put this significant other as a God. But our God, he's perfect. He can take all of our junk and not be hurt about it. So that's why it's important to learn to give that to God first.
And it's also important, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but it's also important to marry someone that has your same beliefs, whatever they are. I mean, hopefully they're Christian beliefs, but the reason is because it can be lonely, you know, and when you can come together and cast your cares together to God as a team, then that really makes the hard times bearable. Yep.
So, Amy, as she just mentioned a little bit ago, Amy was recently married. How long ago?
August 5th.
Like a month, 2 months, almost 2 months. Come on. Man, it's amazing. So, Amy, so you were just in this place of like, okay, I'm a secure single person. You know, I learned to cast my cares to God. He's my everything. And now you were in a place where you were ready, you know, to be with someone. So now the question is, like, in your case, what were some qualities that you were looking for and that you found in Colton? Or to follow up for anyone here, what are some qualities that we should be looking for a future partner?
Shout out Colton.
What? The curly hair is a plus. No, like, the most important would be just, like you hear it all the time, but a firm, like, relationship with Christ. And I don't mean, like, they go to church and then they go to youth group and that's it. That's good, you know. Like, you don't want to justify just an okay relationship with the Lord, but I think what's so important is looking at the fruit of their life.
That's good.
Because they can say that they're a Christian, but are they angry? Are they jealous? Or are they walking in self-control? Are they walking with joy? And how are they treating you? And so it's just, I think, just being so like being so not picky, but at the same time picky, like, and just how are they in Christ? Like, are they strong in who he is? And again, what are their fruits?
Ska, anyone want to add to that, like some qualities?
Shoot, I think so. Don't settle. Like,
Yep.
If there's somebody in your life that you think, yeah, they might be good, let's do it. Yeah. Don't settle.
Yes.
Don't lower your standards. And there's something else I was saying I forgot, so I might think of it. But.
No, that's facts. Don't settle, man. So many people I talk to that are in this place that they want to settle. I've been in that place where it's like because you want to compromise, because you want to be with someone so bad, or like you love the idea of what y'all have, that you're willing to settle. And then what we start like ignoring the red flags that are coming in. You know what? Let's ask that. What would be some red flags that I know this what? Check 1 2.
Is that a fart?
On my mouth, I guess. So, okay, some qualities, right? Some good things to find, but then also, what are some like red flags that you would be cautious with in finding someone?
My first thought goes to purity, because if you are in a relationship and you truly love the other person, you're going to do everything that you can to protect their purity, not just your own purity. And so there's that for sure, where you're protecting the other person's integrity and their honor. So that's one of the first things that my mind goes to.
Yeah, that's what I thought about, was like not compromising, especially whether it's physical boundaries or their beliefs or just self-discipline. It's just so important to have that self-control, or whether it's practical things like not compromising on their like they had an accountability partner and they told them they're going to do their devotions every morning, and then just having like self-control to stick to that instead of compromising. But that when you're like faithful with the little things, they'll be faithful with the big things. And so it's just important to have just the self-control to say no instead of compromising whatever it is.
I think a big thing that mine just did it too. For me, it was being I didn't want to be with somebody that was lukewarm.
Yep.
Right. So like, I was sold out and I was ready, in a position where I felt like I was ready for a relationship, and I met Leora, and she, if you know anything about my wife, how she was speaking, she's not half in, half out.
Yeah.
She's full in. And so when I met her, I was like, well, she's not complicated. She's all in like I am. I'm going to pursue her because she's following the same path that I'm going down. So, like, you can't follow somebody that's, like, girls, if he's pushing the boundary that you guys have set or that you have set to him, he's not the one. Like,
Yep.
we don't have to make it complicated. Like, if it's not working, it's not working. And if they're pushing the boundaries already, what makes you think they're going to stop there? And so with Leora, it was an understanding that we had the same boundaries, and so we knew that the relationship was going to work because we had the same boundaries, if that makes sense, and we were going down the same path.
Has anybody ever asked you for advice and it's like very clear what they should do, but they don't want to listen to? Even they should know the answer. So that happens throughout your life. That doesn't stop in high school. Like, I have friends that are doing the wrong things and they'll come to me, whether they're in an abusive relationship or they're doing the wrong thing or whatever, and they'll say, what do you think I should do? So I want you to pretend like you had a younger sibling that was maybe 10 years younger than you, okay? Just pretend you're like their hero. If you can give yourself the same advice that you would give them, right? So you really need to give yourself the advice, but look at it as it's someone else's story. So, for example, I had a lady at work that called me and she said, listen, I'm married to this alcoholic. No, she wasn't married, I'm sorry. She said, I'm dating this guy. He's just an alcoholic. He's basically killing himself, drinking every day, passes out. You know, what should I do? He's not nice to me, but I've been with him for so long. And so I asked her, she was probably 60 years old. I said, do you have a daughter? She said, yeah. I said, okay, if your daughter was coming to you with this, asking you for advice, what would you do? She's like, I would tell her to leave today. I said, there's your answer.
2 more red flags that I thought of is if you are dating somebody and you notice that they lie a lot, count on it, they will lie to you as well.
It doesn't get better.
Trust is so important in a relationship. The other thing that I thought of, boy, I just had the same thing happening.
It's the couch.
It's the forgetful couch.
And it was so good, too. Oh, abuse. If there is any abuse going on in the relationship, verbal or physical, otherwise, get out of it right now. Tim has never called me anything other than Lynette or sweetie or honey. I have never been the B word or anything along those lines. It's not common. It doesn't have to be common. And if it's happening in your relationship, you need to go.
Yeah, marriage doesn't fix those things. It multiplies it.
I was going to say earlier, a lot of the conversation shifted to talking about boundaries, which I think is a really good thing. So talking about boundaries, you need to set your boundaries, and it's going to be an awkward conversation, but you need to have that conversation if you're dating somebody. And it's never too late to set boundaries either. So just be considering that if you haven't had that conversation with somebody you're dating or in the future you're going to date. Know what your boundaries are, stick to them, have that awkward conversation because it's healthy and good in the long run.
Yeah, since we're talking about dating, this wasn't in the notes or anything, but I think one thing we should really address is the fact that, if you guys agree with me, let me know, that dating isn't a destination, right? Dating shouldn't be a place where you get there and be like, okay, I've arrived here, let's chill, let's relax. Nope. The dating season, we'll jump into that here in a little bit. The dating season should be a time of seeking, preparing for something more, which would be marriage, in the eyes of God. So in this talk of okay, we're a secure single person, we're fine, we're growing in our relationship with God, and we see someone who has some qualities that we like, it's like, okay, I would love to pursue this person. Now, Chad, if you want to share a little bit about your story with your wife, how you pursued her, and then to add on to that, what are some good ways to pursue someone you're interested in? Yeah,
sure. We dated for a few years, and then we've been married for 4.5 already, so that's kind of crazy. But thanks. We're 2 kids in, and it is exhausting. So pursuing, a few big things popped to my mind. The first one is have fun. It is just such a fun stage of life. So if there is somebody that you're pursuing, have fun with them. I love surprises. Surprise the other person. I love to surprise Rebecca with stuff even still. I don't know how much she likes it, but I love it. So surprises are always great. Have fun with each other. Have a boundaries conversation. That's really important in pursuing. Relationships are really important that we talked about already. So your significant other, their relationships are important to them, obviously. So they should be important to you as well. So, my girlfriend, Rebecca, wife now, her relationships with her friends, that's important. Let her have that time. I'm not going to be try to hog all of her time and attention. She needs her girlfriends too. And then extending into her family too. Family relationships are really important to her, so they're really important to me as well. So make that a priority. I think that's it for right now. Yeah,
it's really good. So it was funny because with that question, one of the questions that came in the box was simple: how do I get a girlfriend? Appreciate the honesty, man. Wherever you at, I hear you. So yeah, if you guys want to add on, let's say they like someone, right? And okay, let's speak to the guys for a little bit. Let's say they like.
I got something.
Boom.
Okay, so you really like somebody. I highly recommend hanging out with a group. Don't go
groups.
Straight,
hallelujah.
Don't go straight into a one-on-one date. I don't know. Correct. Maybe when you're older, that's different. But as a teenager, hanging out as a group, you really get to see people's true colors come out. Their, what they're passionate about, their actions and attitudes. So hang out as a group, like make that a priority in the early stages.
Yeah, and if the question's how do I get a girlfriend? Again, take yourself out of the scenario, step back and say, what am I looking for? Yeah. Like, what's attractive to the kind of girls that I want to date? Like, what is it? And if you can be, a God-fearing man that does the right things and takes care of others and, everybody knows these answers. I feel like everybody knows these answers. I mean, you have to get truthful with yourself. But what are you looking for? And then reverse engineer that. And I think if you become who God has called you to be, he'll bring somebody into your life. And I found my wife when I was not looking for a wife, or a girlfriend, because, so I honestly, the way you find a girlfriend is just take the pressure off and work on yourself.
That's good. Yeah, and then with that, I think one of the biggest things, so we speaking to teenagers, so I think I agree it's important right now to just work on getting to know them first. Like, let's say you have an interest in a girl from your church or your school. Get to know them first. Be a friend before a flirt. Let me just say that again. Let that marinate. Be a friend before a flirt. One thing that later finding out that really stood out to my wife with me is before I came to her and said, "What's good, shawty?" I said, "Hi, how are you?" It's not, stop doing it like the movies, because you want to come in from the beginning, with honor, with respect from the very beginning. And she said that's one of the first things that stood out to her, was that I wasn't just trying to be the man and try to flirt with her. I was just trying to be a friend. So it's like for you guys to know, I've shared with people before, I was never flirtatious with my wife until I got the blessing from her dad for the relationship romantically. But during that time of okay, I like this girl and I want to get to know her, I never sent a winky face, never sent a kissy face. For real, I'm saying the real stuff. I just was a friend, respectful, because let's say God didn't have that plan for us to be together. I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to end it toxic. But what do? We jump in with all of our hearts, minds, souls, and strengths with this one person, thinking they're amazing, and then we find out that it doesn't work. But then it's hard to come out because we given our hearts to them, and it hurts trying to get your heart back.
And what if their goals, dreams, and beliefs are different than yours?
Yeah.
You should find that out first before you say, "Me too." Or,
yep.
If you're both seniors, and the girl is like, "Yep, I'm moving to Canada as soon as we graduate," and you never want to live in Canada, that's a wrap. You don't even have to pursue her.
Yeah. Also, I think if you're so desperate to find someone, I think you need to wait until you're ready. And with that, I think with the process of before dating Colton, I think it's so important to tap into what the Lord is speaking, and just ask him on his heart about it. And I think also asking either for peace or unrest, because he will give that to you. And you can also ask him to either close the door or open it. And I think bringing it to someone, whether it's your mom or your youth leader, ask them their opinion, because you need someone who isn't afraid to tell you the truth, what they think about that person.
That's good. Don't do it alone. So real quick, one of the questions that we had was, how do you get over a toxic relationship? And it's tough because this is real life, right? Where, we jump into something and it wasn't the greatest thing. There's a lot of baggage, there's a lot of pain. And the truth is, when you give your heart to somebody, there's pain. So what would you guys say to that? How do you get over a toxic relationship? And with that, how do you avoid it?
First thing that comes to mind is don't jump into another one right
Yep.
away. I mean, I think that's the danger, and that's what culture would tell you. Like, well, if that relationship doesn't work out, just go get another one right away. Yeah, and that's just a dangerous place to be in. So take time out of the dating scene. And again, going back to patience, be patient. Allow God to heal those wounds. And yeah, just don't jump into another one and put that pressure on yourself.
Surround yourself with people that are going to speak life into you. One thing, too, is just spending time in the Word. If you're not really one who spends a lot of time reading the Bible, I would encourage you to take time reading the Psalms. There's a lot of healing in the Psalms. And so spending time with the Lord, spending time with people who are going to speak life to you, and then just sitting and journaling, too, and praying, like, God, what do you say about me? Who do you say that I am? But I think it's brilliant, too. Don't jump back into another relationship. And like Amy said, if you go to somebody and ask them for their advice, they're going to, if you come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Should I get into this relationship with this person? I'm going to tell you the truth that I see.
Yeah.
It's up to you whether you walk it out or not.
Yeah.
So.
That's good.
I'm about to call somebody out, I think, in this crowd. If you're on a dating app, get off it. Like,
come on.
Oh, man. That is the breeding ground for... First of all, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's toxic. The relationships that start on there, get off. I mean, don't do it.
Yeah. That's good.
For me, it was sappy music.
Sappy music.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it was in high school because then I would listen to sappy music, and then the next week I'd hop into another relationship. But where I found my lowest moment was after the breakup before Leora. And that's when I was finally like, I'm so tired of this. Like, I desire to get married. Like, if you have that desire in your heart, God put that there for a reason. I also want to say that because there's almost like this assumption that you have to get married too. And some people don't desire to get married. One of the people I think of that has stayed single and is okay with it is Ryan. And so, like, he's a perfect example. If you have the desire to get married, God put it there for a reason. But if you don't have it, you don't have to get into relationships to be like everybody else.
Good.
And so being secure in yourself is the biggest part of it. And before you can ever get into a relationship where it's going to last, you have to be secure in yourself and your relationship with God first.
Also, since like after you break up or whatever, you're going to have that void, and it's going to be filled with something. So you have to be so mindful on what you're filling that void with, because I know, like Brenna was saying, music, and you just said, like, can be such a big thing. And honestly, like, listening to feels music is not a good idea. Like, it brings a lot of pity into your mind, and you just start to just sulk in your sadness, and then like you maybe think you have to get into another relationship or something like that. And so it's important to fill the void with the word and worship music and serving at your church or something else other than something that will just bring more pain to you.
That's good. Really quick, just by a show of hands, raise your hand if you desire to get married one day. That's beautiful. It's a majority. And, like, that's like a heart with this panel right here. Like, for you raising your hand right there, that's a gift from God. Yep. And that's the amazing thing. Like, don't hear our hearts sitting there and be like, wow, they're just dogging on relationships. Like, no, there's a good way to do relationships, and there's the wrong way to do relationships. So we want to talk about the good way because we are all living proof that it is possible to do it right. Yeah. Right? Like, man, it's crazy how out of all the marriages, 50% don't last. Like, that's an elephant in the room that's hard to even bring up, right? It's hard to swallow that truth. So it can be fearful jumping in to something like a marriage when half of the people that go into it, it doesn't work out. So, Lynette, question for you. What are some keys to have for a strong marriage that will help it last?
I mentioned trust earlier and to be truthful with one another. Soon after Tim and I got married, we had went to a marriage conference, and there they taught us some tools. And we had just went kind of just as a little bit of a getaway. We weren't in crisis or anything like that, but we learned some really valuable things. One of the things that they taught us was how to fight well. And so That's learning how to say what you feel without being disrespectful or tearing down your spouse. And then they also talked about, along with that fighting, was like, if there's something that you tend to argue about a lot, and I think that happens in a lot of marriages where you have the same thing that comes at you, it's just in maybe a different way, to just plan it out ahead of time. Like, okay, we're going to go out for dinner tonight, and when we go, we're going to talk about money, or we're going to talk about kids, or we're going to talk about whatever the issue is. And so you go knowing that conversation is coming, and then you can each take turns to share, like, so when you do this, or when you say this, this is how it makes me feel. Something about marriage that is hard but so necessary is to be vulnerable with each other. And in all truthfulness, we do it physically. In the physical sense, we become vulnerable with each other, but we don't want to share our hearts. We don't want to share what's the naked truth about who I am inside, with our spouse. Because I remember they told us to tell your spouse your greatest fear and your biggest dream. And it surprised me how scary that was, But when you really reveal who you are to your spouse, there's just this whole new depth of intimacy, this whole new level that it takes you to that it strengthens you.
Yeah, that's really good. And that's cool because, like, 3 different people asked the question, like, how do you fight with your spouse? Mm-hmm. So obviously that's an important one.
Yeah. I remember one thing they taught us, it was kind of a funny way to do it, but it keeps the tone kind of light. And so you guys can remember this for when you guys get married. They said to take a piece of tile, like floor tile, and then when you're having that hard conversation with your spouse, whoever's holding the floor, you've got the floor, so you get to speak. So I get to speak for a little bit, and then it's my turn to hand over. That way you're not interrupting, because so many times when we're having an intense conversation with your spouse, you are not thinking at all about what they're saying. You're waiting for them to shut up so you can get a word in edgewise. And sometimes we don't even wait. We just go ahead and get started right away anyhow.
I think one of the keys is, it's hard to get married. Like, it is. Breno had to go all the way to New England to find a wife. But no, it's a lot of work. Like, even if your marriage is great and you both love God more than you love each other, marriage is still very hard. But one of the things that I've learned out of sermons, probably at this church, is it's more important to be in relationship than it is to be right. How many of y'all like to just be right? Come on, everybody. You know what I mean? But and another thing I always tell my friends that are married that are guys is I always tell them, never treat or talk to your wife the way you wouldn't allow someone else to.
That's good.
I think, like, the first couple years of our marriage for Leora and I was when I knew my wife, but I didn't know her. So when you're married for long enough and you're spending every single minute together, you learn each other's cues, tendencies, stuff like that, and who they are is who they are. So what I learned, just an example, I learned that when I hurt Leora's feelings, at first, in the beginning of our marriage, I wanted to fix it right away. You know what I mean? Like, that's very much how I am. Like, if we got an issue, I want to solve it right now. I'm not going to expose her, I promise. And so I would always try to fix it, and then I could tell she was getting more frustrated. And so I'm like, okay, well, this isn't working. I want to solve it now, but she doesn't really want to, she just needs her time to hurt or whatever. And so now, most recently, there was something a couple months ago, I don't know, or something. I hurt her feelings, of course, because I'm a dork. So I hurt her feelings, and I could tell that she didn't want to talk about it. And so the only reason I knew that is because I had learned her. So learn your spouse. Learn who they are. And so I learned that she doesn't want to talk about it right away. And even though I do, that's okay. We don't need to talk about it right now. And so we come back a couple hours later, and we both apologize to one another, and that's the healing process. So, learning your spouse is such a crucial, you think you know them really well until you've been married for several years, and then you learn even more about each other. And I think that's just, learn how to fight well is a good point.
Yeah, with that, whether it's marriage or dating or friendships, whatever, just choosing your battles wisely. because it's all up to you on how you react to someone saying something to you or whatever it is. And so just don't make a bigger deal out of something than it really is. And just choose to forgive even when it's hard, because there's just some things that aren't worth holding grudges over.
This has probably already been said. You talked about it a lot, but communication is just so important. Over-communicate, then gosh, it's just so important. So communicate well. Another thing, it's this couch, man. Shoot, it's gonna be. I remember. I think you mentioned that she has a great marriage, and you guys do not have a great marriage because it just is. That's just how it ended up. A great marriage happens because two people are very intentional with each other and with their goals and with what they want their relationship and family to look like. So, intentionality is huge. You cannot coast into a good relationship, a good marriage. I don't remember who the author was, but there's an author that said, the only thing you have to do to drift is nothing. Yeah. It's so good. Not my words. I'll take credit, though. The only thing you have to do to drift is nothing. Like in your relationship with God, it's true. And in your relationship with an individual, it's true also. So, man, intentionality.
Can I just say this real quick? If your parents' marriage isn't a picture of the marriage that you want in the future, don't feel like your marriage has to end up like theirs. And I just want to say that now. So, like, if your parents are divorced, even, that doesn't have to be your marriage. You don't have to follow the same path that they have followed. So you're responsible. Unfortunately, family chains get passed down from generation to generation. It's biblical, right? So it's your job then to break that. And so set your goals, set your standards higher than what you've seen if that's been the example in your life.
Another reason why you need to learn who the person you're attracted to is before you jump in.
I don't even remember what the question was now, but
no, this is
something
good.
else just came to mind is praying with your spouse.
Good.
You mentioned 50% of marriages fail, first-time marriages. I'm pretty sure it's like 99% or more of marriages succeed when the couple prays together. So make that a priority. Don't think that I do that perfectly, because we don't. We need to be better at that, actually. But that's really important. Start small. You don't need to do this long prayer and like make it really fancy. Like, start small or start one day a week or whatever. Even if you're dating somebody, pray with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last thoughts before we close?
Are you gonna do the one about the girl?
Yeah, you should do that.
I saw a question in there that said, "Why are girls so difficult?"
Yeah, if anybody knows that, just
I'm going to give you the answer.
If you could tell the group, that would be great.
Know.
So we have, yeah. Do you guys want like 5 more minutes, or y'all want to go free time? Carly,
2 minutes.
Carly said, to me, real quick, she's also me, so she can do this, but my wife wanted to share something. We're one, so I guess we can. This will pass. But my wife wanted to share something real quick.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, I feel so important now. Thank you. One thing that I just wanted to share really quick, and it goes back to being to knowing who you are. Before Brenna got into my life, I did have boyfriends, but like for 1 month. I think it was 2. For 1 month, and I was in high school, and then I had a boyfriend for 1 month, and then it didn't work, and then I had another boyfriend, but nothing really crazy. It was just a small thing. But one thing that I learned after trying is that God wanted to do things inside of my heart as a single person, and I had to understand that. So what does it mean to know God first and know who you are before you get to know another person? Is because you have to know who God is. And then you have to, when we know who God is, we know there's some things inside of us that is not matching who God is. So then you know that there are some things inside of you that has to be changed. And one thing inside of me that had to be changed when I met God fully was my vision towards my earthly father. And I knew that I had to get that right before I met Breno, because it is important to have relationship with God first, to be one with God, then you can be one with another person. Because if I was not one with God before Breno and got in a relationship already carrying some unforgiveness inside of me towards my father, I believe that this relationship wouldn't be a blessing as it is today. So if you have a question inside of you like, okay, when should I date, or how, or whatever, the first thing that you have to ask yourself, is there anything inside of me that is not matching the identity of Christ? And I knew that that was my relationship with my father, and I had to get that right. So focus on you and God, and after that, things will happen naturally.
Thank you, baby. Find someone like that, guys. I'll go ahead and, man, let me pray over us. I think this, have you guys liked this? Was it cool? Was it cool? Sweet, sweet. Let me pray for us, and we'll do free time. God, we love you. Thank you so much, God, for relationships. Thank you for just your blessing over them. And, God, I just pray nothing but blessing and success over my friends here in their current or future relationships. God, I pray that you can simply satisfy their hearts and souls as a single person. Remind them, God, that it's okay to be single. It's actually a blessing to be single. And I pray that when that time does come to pursue someone, that you give them wisdom from your heart and direction in what you have for them for their future relationships. God, thank you so much for what you're doing here at Awake. And I pray just for your spirit to continue to lead and guide us. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, everyone said, amen. Hey, let's give our guests a great hand.